say the things that I see in the beverage world that I could encapsulate most simply, it would be green and small. And by green, I mean that whether it's wine, beer, spirits, sodas, juices, coffee, tea, green and or organic, biodynamic, fair trade, we're seeing these labels pop up more and more often, and it's really exciting to see it grow. In the coffee world, it started with fair trade coffee, and of course in the world of wine, old world in particular, especially Europe, biodynamic and organic practices in the vineyard and the winery are really ancient methods. And now for those folks that are in the old world, it's old news, but for most of us in the new world, it's completely new concept. So it's really exciting to see that branch out now into spirits, as I said before, juices and all sorts of other beer. So that's an exciting thing to see. Another would be size. I think even though portion sizes have always been talked about being overly large, in our country in particular, when it comes to food, these days people are starting to go small, whether it's small plates they're sharing, but to go with those small plates, they're asking for small tastes. So oftentimes in wine bars, you'll see 2-ounce pours of 4 different wines that you can try things with, which is really fun. Some wine bars are offering wines in little carafes as opposed to full bottles. Even for casual picnics, you can get these 250 milliliter juice boxes and take them with you and have something really casual and fun. So small is big. The economy and beverage consumption, well, they're pretty closely tied. People are really enjoying wine now more than ever. It's having an unprecedented success rate with respect to people's consumption. Overall, with respect to beverage, there's sort of this interesting dichotomy going on. I see either extreme high-priced wines now being enjoyed more by the glass as opposed to the bottle, which is interesting. And that also goes for premium spirits. People want to indulge in something that they can afford, but they may not go for the entire bottle. So restaurants at the high end are offering things like $75 glasses of first growth Bordeaux or $2,000 glasses of single malt Scotch. And so you're seeing these really interesting, quirky, high-end price items happening. But more realistically, I think for the majority of us, a lot of value is starting to come through at restaurants and at retail. And how it's expressing itself in restaurants is whether it's a domestic wine from California, Washington, Oregon, or incredible find from the rest of the globe where there's amazing value, whether it's Greece or India or, oh gosh, China even for that matter. There's all sorts of incredible value being offered because these wines are undiscovered. They don't have a big marketing push behind them, and so buyers can get them for clients in restaurants, and we can try them for an affordable price. So it's really interesting. I see that a lot of sommeliers or people that are running beverage programs are trying to bring more people into their restaurants and inviting them via a value taste of wine. So that's pretty exciting. It's really interesting about wine bars in the U.S. in particular. I started my career, I won't say how many years ago, in the wine bar world when I was in college. And at that time, it was a novel idea. It was sort of a curiosity, and there weren't too many of them around. The classics were in London and Paris and Hong Kong, but there weren't many in the U.S. And I think it was before its time. And now, where this sort of intersection has happened of young people who are really interested in wine, millennials, that is, and then, of course, baby boomers, who have always been sort of the flag bearers of wine consumption, the people who have consumed the most over the last 40 years. The two of them are a very curious group of people, and they really insist on diversity and variety, and they want something really interesting. So what I'm seeing in wine bars is they're popping up in all sorts of sizes of cities, which is really cool. They have themes that are endless in terms of their creativity. Some wine bars go so far as to say we're only specializing in South African wine, or we're only specializing in Spanish wine, or they're doing things that are really exploratory and different. They're also in that, along those lines, pairing food. So having a fun food experience with those exotic wines is really great. Now, too, you're seeing lists that are absolutely incredible, like 50 and 60 bottle lists by the glass. I remember when having 10 wines by the glass was a pretty extravagant thing and a difficult operational thing to have happen in a restaurant. But now you can have upwards of even 100 wines by the glass. And a lot of these lists are really vast. They're 200 plus, 500 plus, it all depends. But a lot of passion is going into it on the part of the owners and the beverage directors. So it's really exciting time for wine. The organic spirit movement is really exciting. But before I talk about organics, I have to talk about the spirit movement. The spirits are lifting, as I like to say. About in 1990, 5 distilleries were in business in the U.S. 18 years later, there was 150 of them. And I think a lot of this has been driven by the local bore movement, this movement of really having local-based distilleries, and also the revival of techniques and styles of spirits that haven't been around for a while that people want to see come back. I think there's real nostalgia, and it's being expressed through spirits. Things like Aviation Gin or Square One Organic Vodka, or some of the eau-de-vies coming out of the Clear Creek Distillery in Oregon. These beverages are really, really special. In Prohibition times, distilleries and wineries were shut down, so this country became a very dry place. And a lot of innovative ideas sort of got mothballed away with that period of time. And now what's really interesting is that this resurgence on the part primarily of mixologists, cocktailians, both the bartenders and consumers, is driving this need to try things that are small batch, that are different, that are unique, that have a lot of flavor. So that's really, really interesting. The other part about the spirit movement when it comes to organics is that it's not just the way it tastes qualitatively, but how it also affects the environment and the people that work there. That's a huge concern when it comes to large, mid, and small-scale farming. So it's really great to see that producers are really advocating this, much like they are in the world of food, and it's exciting. So we like to say it's being social and socially conscious. It's a really great time for spirits. I would say if I had to highlight 5 that are really kind of the hot ones right now, it would be absinthe, tequila, small batch whiskey, gin, and rum. From the standpoint of all of those spirits, absinthe is probably the one that's had the most excitement around it this year, and that's largely because it became legal to actually import it into the U.S. for the first time in 95 years. It's an herb-infused spirit. It is classically enjoyed, dripped over a cube of sugar, served with water, and it slowly becomes this cloudy mixture, and it's got a lot of lore and history behind it. And rightly so, it was illegal when it was wrongly made by certain producers, but a lot of producers are making it right in the classic way, so it's really exciting to see it come back, and the mixologists are all behind that. Tequila, which is a favorite of mine. It's just one of the most exciting beverages out there, and it's one that's been maligned, unfortunately, because the ones that aren't 100% blue agave tequilas, generally speaking, will not make you feel that great the next day, and all of us have our tequila stories. But the ones that are made really properly from agave are just absolutely delicious. And people are learning more about the different styles, whether it's Blanco, Reposado, or Añejo. And they're keeping several brands at home to taste and try with their friends. So that's pretty exciting. You don't really do that with a gin or a vodka at home. You have your choice. So that's pretty cool. Another one would be rum. And rum, particularly artisanal rum, from a category called Marriott Agricole from the Caribbean. Those are coming into vogue, and people are discovering them from small plantations, and they're actually really, really tasty, and they make delicious drinks. The small batch whiskeys are ones that are being produced in the U.S. from barley, much like they are in Scotland. But people are really interested in trying to make those whiskeys in this country as opposed to other places. So we're seeing a renaissance in that as well. The world of sake is really, really exciting. Sake is really still nascent in the U.S., but what's really interesting is it's starting to become much more popular and prevalent on wine lists. So sommeliers, who have always been sort of the guardians of the next new thing, have really seen with sake its versatility with food, its sort of complexity and its nuances. And what's really interesting about it is that, much like wine, it's a regional beverage, so it's expressed a lot through the region where it comes from, and the water and the grain, the rice itself. So what's really fun is you're seeing obviously classic sake coming from Japan, but then there's some really exciting producers like Sake One in Oregon who are bringing sake to people. Made in the U.S., it's a craft Oregon sake, and people are realizing that it's fun to enjoy with your meal, that drinking it cold is exactly the way classically it should be enjoyed. So there's a lot of old myths being dispelled. A lot of that commercial sake is sort of still popular at big family-style restaurants and popular restaurants, but the fine dining world is embracing the world of sake, and it's not just for sushi anymore.